Welcome to the authentic revelations of infidelity. Confessions. It all began on a sweltering summer morning in Virginia. The air clung to me like a heavy blanket, my scarf adhering to my neck, as I lingered outside the quaint brick house. This marked my inaugural employment in the U.S., a stark contrast to the dusty lanes of Bala, where my roots lie. Leaving my family and my small town was something I never envisioned yet. Life has a peculiar knack for presenting unexpected twists. The Jacobs, a seemingly flawless family of 4, found themselves in need of a nanny, and I found myself in need of some extra cash. It transcended mere financial gain. It was about, I aimed to demonstrate to my parents and siblings that I could thrive independently in a land so distinct from Jordan. At 33, I found myself single and fiercely independent, a rarity for a woman hailing from my background. Brianna Jacobs, my host, exuded elegance and beauty. She donned elegant blouses and exquisite heels that resonated on the marble floors of their grand residence. She greeted me with a warm smile, her blonde hair neatly gathered into a bun, and spoke in a deliberate and clear manner, as if she aimed to ensure I grasped every word she uttered. In those days, everything revolved around the power of language. Next came Zach Jacobs, the husband. He stood tall, exuding an effortless charm that enveloped you in a sense of comfort and belonging. His sandy brown hair curled slightly at the ends, and the laugh lines etched on his face revealed a man who had embraced life rather than merely endured its challenges. He remained mostly silent that day, offering only a courteous nod as he passed me a cup of tea. Splendor and Emmanuel, aged 5 and 3, brimmed with energy, their curious minds perpetually seeking answers. Nerves fluttered within me. I had never stepped into the role of a nanny before, yet Brianna offered her reassurance, reminding me that my experience as the eldest of 6 would serve me well. That would suffice. She was kind, yet I sensed her perfectionist nature. She handed me a hefty binder, brimming with rules, meal plans, daily schedules, emergency contacts, and even instructions on how to fold laundry. The initial weeks unfolded in a rather ordinary manner. I would rise at 6 a.m., prepare breakfast pack, a lunch for school, and entertain Emmanuel until nap time. My days revolved around storybooks, finger painting, and dashing around the backyard with Emmanuel. By night, I would retreat to my small room in the basement, weary yet content. It was one afternoon, roughly a month into my new role, that I noticed Zach stealing glances in my direction. As I sat on the kitchen floor, tidying up the chaos left by my little one and his juice box, an unsettling feeling crept over me. Someone was watching. "You're incredible with them," he remarked casually, leaning against the counter. My gaze lifted, a wave of astonishment washing over me. "Oh, thank you, sir." "Please call me Zach," he replied with a warm smile. I nodded, warmth creeping into my cheeks. It wasn't merely the words he chose, but the manner in which he delivered them. It resonated with a sincerity that felt unmistakably real. In my hometown, it was uncommon for guys to engage with women in such a manner unless there was a specific, hidden agenda. Zach harbored a concealed motive, yet he struck me as distinctly different. It became apparent to me how he consistently inquired about whether I had eaten lunch, extended offers to assist with groceries, and lingered in the kitchen while I prepared meals. Brianna, in contrast, frequently vanished, ensnared by the relentless demands of her career. One evening, while I was arranging the table, Zach inquired, "Don't you ever feel weary?" I merely shrugged. Weary of what? Taking care of everything for everyone. "You shouldn't have to," he replied, his tone earnest. His words lingered in my mind long after he had departed. It was an odd sensation to be acknowledged in such a manner. In my culture, it is expected that women consistently offer their support and service without expressing discontent. However, the words spoken by Zach instilled in me a sense of worth. I attempted to dismiss it, reminding myself of my identity and the principles I hold dear. I was a Muslim woman deeply rooted in my faith and traditions, bound by limits I could not traverse, regardless of how charming or attractive my boss might be. Yet, as I would soon discover, life had other plans for me that summer. The days stretched out sweltering and interminable. Brianna's business travels grew increasingly frequent, resulting in Zach and me spending more time alone with the children. Gradually, chaos began to unfold. Initially, it was merely playful banter, lingering glances and conversations that stretched just a bit beyond their intended duration. Yet beneath the surface, I was acutely aware that I was toying with danger. My mother's voice echoed in my mind, firm and unwavering. "Aaliyah, remember who you are. The world may attempt to mislead you, but you must remain true to yourself." It was a principle I had always cherished. My self-discipline, my capacity to withstand the allure of contemporary existence. Zach, however, was an anomaly. On that rainy evening, the world shifted in ways unimaginable. The children lay in slumber, the home enveloped in a serene stillness, broken only by the gentle patter of rain against the glass. As I tidied up the kitchen following dinner, Zach entered the room. "Do you require assistance?" he inquired, preparing himself by rolling up his sleeves. "No, it's fine. I'm nearly finished," I responded. Yet he lingered all the same. We toiled in quietude for a while, the atmosphere heavy with unspoken thoughts. At last he shattered the stillness. "Do you ever? I miss home," he inquired each day. "I confessed, yet my presence here serves a purpose. You have given up so much," he remarked, his tone brimming with respect. My gaze fell upon him, a wave of astonishment washing over me. "Why do you say that?" "Because I see it. The way you prioritize everyone else, the way you never voice a complaint, it's a rarity." His words took me by surprise. No one had ever addressed me in such a manner before, not even back home. A peculiar blend of gratitude and guilt washed over me, as if I were violating something sacred merely by lending an ear. "Oh, it's really nothing," I replied, downplaying the praise. "Indeed it is." He gazed at me, and an unspoken change rippled through the air between us. It was subtle, nearly imperceptible, yet I sensed it, a bond, a flicker, a silent comprehension of something we both hesitated to articulate. That night, I lay in bed burdened by a weighty conflict, ensnared between my convictions and the persistent emotions that clung to me. I sought strength, clarity, and the courage to adhere to my convictions. Yet beneath the surface, an unsettling awareness stirred within me, hinting that everything was on the brink of transformation in ways I could not foresee. I endeavored to maintain a sense of professionalism, believing that the connection I sensed with Zach would eventually dissipate like a fleeting cloud. Yet life is far from simple. Each day unfolded with seemingly trivial moments, yet gradually they chipped away at the fortress I had constructed around my heart. Brianna's absence settled into a routine. She was perpetually whisked away to conferences in New York, engaged in business meetings in Chicago, or spending nights in luxurious hotels that had only graced the pages of magazines I'd perused. Zach embraced the role of the unwavering parent, while I found myself alongside him as his partner. Amidst the daily whirlwind of nurturing splendor and Emmanuel, the children held a deep affection for him. Splendor would leap onto his lap during story time, gripping his shirt with her small hands as he animatedly read in whimsical voices. Emmanuel trailed behind him like a devoted shadow, mirroring his every move. Observing their interactions revealed a gentler, more vulnerable aspect of Zach that resonated with me deeply, leaving me at a loss for words. One afternoon, while I was meticulously folding laundry in the living room, Zach entered carrying a box. "I believed you would appreciate this," he remarked, placing it gently on the table. "On the coffee table, what's that?" I inquired, wiping my hands on my apron. He lifted the lid of the box to reveal a collection of cookbooks. "I noticed you've been experimenting with new recipes lately. I thought this might inspire you." I stood there utterly speechless. It wasn't merely the gift, it was the sentiment behind it. No one had ever truly acknowledged the small things I did, let alone valued them. "Thank you," I murmured, feeling a lump form in my throat. "It's nothing," he replied, yet the look in his eyes conveyed a different message. The children lay in peaceful slumber, while Zach and I found ourselves once more in the kitchen. It had evolved into a familiar ritual for us, those serene interludes following the day's chaos. As I busily wiped down the counters, his voice broke through the silence. "You work too hard, Aaliyah." I glanced up, taken aback by his unexpected remark. "It's my job," he said, shaking his head. "No, you do more than your job. You care. You love these kids as if they were your own." "They're easy to love," I replied, attempting to downplay it. "So are you." The words lingered in the air, thick with tension and discomfort. I stood still, uncertain of how to respond. "Aaliyah," he began, but then he hesitated. "I apologize for the interruption," he said hastily. "I shouldn't have said that." "No, it's fine," I replied, though deep down I knew it truly wasn't. We lingered in quietude, his words suspended in the air, laden with unspoken weight. I felt compelled to express to him that he was mistaken, that I was not someone who could be loved effortlessly, that I was intricate and imperfect, bound by constraints he could never comprehend. Yet I chose to remain silent. Days slipped away in a blur, and I attempted to reassure myself that all remained the same. Yet beneath the surface, I was acutely aware of the truth. Everything had shifted. Zach seemed to permeate the very atmosphere. His laughter lingered echoing in the silence. The scent of him lingered in the atmosphere, and his voice echoed in my mind long after he had departed. I began to observe the subtle nuances of his character, how his eyes crinkled with warmth when he smiled, the soft hum that escaped his lips as he washed the dishes, and the gentle insistence with which he taught the kids to say thank you and please. He was more than just kind. He embodied a genuine thoughtfulness that felt truly remarkable. One afternoon, as I gently propelled Splendor on the swing in the backyard, Zach emerged with a tray of iced tea and remarked, "I thought you might need a break." He extended a glass toward me. "Thank you," I replied, accepting it with a warm smile. We took our place on the porch steps, observing the children at play. "Have you ever pondered the possibilities of what your life might have become?" he asked unexpectedly. My gaze fell upon him, a wave of astonishment washing over me. "What do you mean?" "I mean if you had remained in Bala, if you hadn't been coming here constantly." I nodded. I understood his implication. "I understand that, but I arrived here with a purpose." "And have you discovered it?" he inquired, his eyes unwavering. I hesitated, caught in a moment of uncertainty about how to reply. In certain respects indeed, yet in others it remains intricate. He nodded as if he grasped the nuance. Indeed, life has a peculiar knack for unfolding in such a manner. Surprising us, right, it does. I nodded, my voice barely a whisper. For a moment we sat in silence, the air thick with unspoken words. I longed to express how much his kindness meant to me, how comforting his presence was in a world that often felt lonely and strange. But I couldn't. I wouldn't. That night I lay in my room wide awake, staring at the ceiling, lost in thoughts of my family back home. my mum's prayers, and my dad's earnest reminders to stay true to my faith. They always said, never forget who you are. I longed to believe I remained that girl who prayed 5 times daily and donned her scarf with unwavering pride. Yet the reality was that I was evolving, and it filled me with fear. The following morning, I made a conscious effort to avoid Zach immersing myself in chores, focusing on the tasks at hand, and keeping my thoughts engaged elsewhere. Yet, as the afternoon wore on, evading him became an insurmountable challenge. He discovered me in the laundry room meticulously sifting through a mountain of garments. "Alia," he murmured gently. I kept my gaze downwards. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." I responded hastily, yet he remained unconvinced. "I implore you to listen," he urged, moving in closer. "I realize I made a mistake. This isn't about you." I interrupted, finally meeting his gaze. "It's about me, my beliefs, my faith." "I understand," he responded. Yet the expression in his eyes conveyed a different story. "How could he possibly? I can't." I began, but the words faltered, caught in a web of hesitation. "I can't handle this." He nodded slowly, a wave of regret sweeping across his features. "I apologize, Aaliyah. It was never my intention to cause you any discomfort." "You didn't," I replied hastily. "That's the problem." For a fleeting moment, we remained still, the silence enveloping us, conveying all that needed to be said, all the things we left undone. "I'll allow you the distance you need," he finally uttered. "Thank you." I murmured, my voice trembling as he stepped away. A surge of relief washed over me, yet beneath it lingered a profound ache that eluded expression. Though I was certain of my decision, the weight of it remained heavy on my heart. On that night, I poured my heart into prayer, like never before, seeking strength, guidance, and the bravery to remain authentic to my true self. As I knelt on the floor, tears cascading down my cheeks, it dawned on me that I was not merely grappling with temptation, I was contending with something far more formidable. A fragment of my being felt adrift. The days that followed our conversation in the laundry room were fraught with tension, yet somehow manageable. Zach honored his promise and allowed me the space I needed, enabling me to concentrate on my work. I immersed myself in the care of Splendor and Emmanuel, orchestrating a series of crafts and baking endeavors to fill our days from dawn until dusk. Yet despite my hands being occupied, my thoughts continually wandered back to him. Zach exhibited a courteous demeanor, yet there was an air of distance about him, and I continually reassured myself that this was the most effective path to let go. I could pretend as if nothing had transpired, as if our conversation in the laundry room was merely a fleeting lapse in judgment. For a fleeting moment, it seemed to almost succeed. Suddenly, the tempest descended. As the sun dipped below the horizon on that Friday evening, the first drops of rain began to fall. The thunder rumbled ominously, rattling the windows and sending a jolt of fear through Emmanuel. As I busied myself tidying the dinner table, he clutched my leg with a sudden urgency. "Fear not, Emmanuel," I reassured, lifting him into my arms. "It's merely a bit of noise. Allow me to prepare you for bed all right." I guided him upstairs and began to read his cherished bedtime story. The rain poured relentlessly from the heavens, drenching everything in its path. As the last whispers of the children's laughter faded into the quiet of the night, the storm outside began to intensify. The wind howled fiercely, yet within the house, an eerie silence prevailed, contrasting sharply with the chaos unfolding beyond its walls. I descended the stairs, anticipating the familiar sight of Zach sprawled on the couch, but to my surprise, he was in the kitchen, gazing out the window, a glass of wine cradled in his hand. With his shirt sleeves rolled up, the warm kitchen light accentuated the sharp angles of his jaw. He appeared deep in contemplation, and I lingered at the threshold, uncertain whether to break the silence. "Do you drink wine?" he inquired, his gaze fixed elsewhere, as if he sensed my presence without needing to look. "No," I replied, crossing the threshold into the room. "It contradicts my beliefs." He nodded finally, turning his gaze toward me. "I suspected as much. You stand apart. Is that a bad thing?" I inquired, a subtle smile beginning to form. "Not at all," he murmured gently. "It's invigorating." I began to wipe down the counters, attempting to dismiss the way his words quickened my heartbeat. The atmosphere in the room was palpable, and I sensed his eyes fixed on me as I toiled away. "Aaliyah," he finally spoke, breaking the silence that had lingered between them. "Is that so?" I responded without lifting my gaze. "Can we talk?" I halted my cleaning and turned to confront him. "About what?" I inquired. "Let us speak of ourselves," he murmured, his tone subdued. I shook my head, my heart pounding in my chest. "There is no us, Zach. Then why can't I stop thinking about you?" He stepped closer. "Zach, please," I began, but he interrupted me. "I understand it's not right," he admitted, his voice trembling. "I understand that I shouldn't harbor these feelings, yet they persist. Each day I watch you nurture my children, transforming this house into a sanctuary, and I—" His voice faltered, his fingers tangling in his hair. "His hair! I've never encountered anyone quite like you." My breath hitched in my throat. His words were everything I sought to dismiss, everything I insisted I didn't wish to hear. Yet hearing them spoken aloud rendered it impossible to ignore the undeniable connection between us. "Zach," I murmured, my voice scarcely a whisper. "You're married. You have a family." "I know," he replied, his eyes brimming with sorrow. "But Brianna is perpetually absent, always preoccupied, and when she is present it feels as though we're mere strangers. You're the only one who makes me feel—" He paused, as if the weight of his confession was too great to bear. It's difficult to articulate. I found myself ensnared, caught in the conflict between recognizing the wrongness of it all and yearning for the warmth of being desired, cherished, and acknowledged. "Zach," I whispered, but it felt less like a plea for him to halt and more like an acceptance of what was to come. He bridged the distance between us, his lips finding mine in a gentle kiss that swiftly deepened as we surrendered to the emotions we had long suppressed. His hand grazed my waist, drawing me nearer, and I felt myself dissolving into him, the world around us fading away. Everything else faded into the background, Brianna. The kids, my faith, my family. In that moment, it was solely him. Our connection transcended a mere kiss that night. With the storm howling outside, we crossed an irrevocable threshold. He led me upstairs to his bedroom, and his touch ignited a fire within me that I hadn't even realized existed. I surrendered to him as he undressed me, his hands tracing every contour of my body as if I were something divine. In his embrace, I felt beautiful, powerful, and utterly liberated. It was a far cry from anything I had envisioned back home. Intimacy had never been like this. We delved into a topic that typically remains shrouded in secrecy, yet with Zach the conversation took on a different hue. His attentiveness, patience, and passion stirred emotions within me that I never imagined I would experience. In that moment, I experienced a profound sense of being truly wanted for the very first time. In the aftermath, we found ourselves entwined, enveloped in each other's warmth, as the rain serenaded us with its gentle patter against the windows. I was aware that guilt or shame, perhaps even a sense of disgust, should have washed over me, yet it didn't. Instead, I experienced an unusual tranquility, as if I had at last discovered something that had long eluded me. Yet as dawn broke the following day, the weight of reality descended. It struck me with the force of a freight train as I prepared the kids for breakfast. I averted my gaze from Zach, burdened by the gravity of our actions. Yet, as our gazes met, and he offered a subtle, understanding smile, a wave of adrenaline surged through me, reminiscent of the thrill from the previous night. The conclusion was far from final. In the weeks that followed, we found ourselves grasping at fleeting moments whenever the opportunity arose. A gentle brush of hands as we passed in the hallway, a hushed conversation in the kitchen once the children were tucked in, or a swift embrace behind the sanctuary of closed doors. Each time I crossed that threshold, I promised myself it would be the final occasion, yet somehow it never turned out to be. Zach consumed my thoughts, and I found myself powerless to resist. He erased from my mind all that I held dear, my convictions, my past, the principles I once embraced. For a moment, I allowed myself to believe that we could sustain this existing in our own secluded realm, hidden from the eyes of the outside world. Yet beneath the surface, I understood that it was destined to unravel, and when the moment arrived, it would be nothing short of catastrophic. The ensuing weeks unfolded in a whirlwind of chaos. Moments snatched away and secrets softly spoken wove through my days, creating a tapestry of both bliss and apprehension. Zach and I navigated our secret moments with a blend of caution and abandon, stealing away together in the quiet hours when Brianna was absent, the children were dreaming, or the house lay in stillness. Each time our fingers brushed, I whispered to myself that it would be the final moment, yet it never turned out to be so. It seemed as though I inhabited two distinct worlds. By day, I transformed into Aaliyah, the caring nanny who shared enchanting bedtime tales, prepared nourishing meals, and offered gentle smiles to Splendor and Emmanuel. Yet as darkness fell and silence enveloped the world, the house, I descended into a shadowy realm, transforming into an entirely different being, one who was wholly devoted to Zach in a manner I had never experienced with anyone else. One evening, after I had tucked the kids in for the night, Zach discovered me in the living room, diligently folding laundry. The house was enveloped in a profound silence, a stark contrast to the usual bustle, as Brianna had departed that morning for yet another work trip. He lingered in the doorway, observing me with an intensity that transformed the atmosphere of the room even before a single word escaped his lips. "Do you ever take a break?" he inquired, a trace of amusement dancing in his voice. As I lifted my gaze, a smile crept onto my face, surprising even me. It falls upon someone to ensure the smooth operation of this establishment. He strolled across the room and settled beside me, his thigh grazing against mine. "You're incredible, do you realize that?" I chuckled gently and gave my head a slight shake. "I'm just doing my job." His expression shifted, and he replied earnestly, "No, you're more than that. You've contributed more to this family than I believe Brianna or I ever could." A pang of guilt washed over me at the mention of her name. "You shouldn't say that." "Why not?" "It's true." I averted my eyes, focusing on the heap of clothes before me. "You love her, Zach. She's your wife." He let out a sigh, raking his fingers through his hair. "I do love her, but not like I love you." He said, his words lingering in the air, weighty and unmistakable. I felt compelled to express to him that he was mistaken, that his love for me was an illusion, and that our connection was merely a misstep. Yet I found myself at a loss for words, for within me I harbored the very same sentiment. He extended his hand, his fingers intertwining with mine in a delicate dance. "Aaliyah, look at me." I paused, uncertainty swirling within me, but eventually I raised my eyes to meet his. The fervor in his gaze rendered the air thick and difficult to draw in. You mean everything to me, he declared. I am aware. This feels so wrong, yet I can't imagine my existence without you. The tears I had been suppressing finally broke free, and he enveloped me in his embrace, holding me close as I wept. I'm sorry, I murmured. I never intended for this to unfold. Neither did I, he replied gently, but I have no regrets. As the days turned into weeks, our secret became increasingly difficult to conceal. Brianna's absence allowed us the freedom to explore our illicit connection, but her return made it unbearable. I sought to evade her as much as possible, too filled with shame to meet her gaze. She was so kind to me, completely trusting, and blissfully unaware of the treachery unfolding right before her eyes. Aliyah, you've been such a blessing to this family, she remarked one evening as we sat in the kitchen. I don't know how we managed before you came along. Her words struck me like a blow to the stomach, and I merely forced a smile. Thanks, Mrs. Jacob. Oh, just call me Brianna. She chuckled lightly. You're practically part of the family. Her unwavering trust only deepened my guilt, yet it changed nothing. Each night after Brianna retired, Zach would seek me out. There were moments when our conversations flowed effortlessly, and others when we simply embraced, enveloped in the stillness of the home. More often than not, we found ourselves in his bed, entwined in a fervor that made the world outside fade away. One evening, after Brian departed for a weekend conference, Zach and I indulged in a bottle of wine in the living room. I hadn't intended to drink, but he filled my glass and playfully coaxed me until I finally relented. The warmth of the wine coursed through me, loosening my hold on restraint. Beautiful, he murmured, his voice deep and gravelly. Are you aware of that? I replied with a shake of my head, feeling a flush rise to my cheeks. You're merely expressing that. He drew nearer. No, you truly are the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. Before I could respond, he kissed me, his lips meeting mine in a manner that conveyed this was not merely about physical attraction. It was something profound, something we struggled to define. His hands found their way to my waist, drawing me closer, and I sensed myself surrendering entirely. That night, we found ourselves not in the bedroom, but rather anchored in the very spot we occupied. On the living room floor, the flickering light from the fireplace danced across the walls, enveloping us as we surrendered to the depths of one another. The experience was fervent, untamed, and utterly enveloping. As dawn broke, I found myself nestled in his embrace, the echoes of the previous night swirling through my thoughts. Shame should have washed over me. Yet instead, an unexpected wave of happiness enveloped my being. After a considerable stretch, a profound sense of belonging washed over me. As I slipped into my clothes and began preparing breakfast for the children, Zach entered the kitchen, his expression soft and warm. Good morning, he remarked. He pressed his lips to my forehead as dawn broke, and I fought to maintain a calm tone when I uttered the words we needed to talk. His demeanor had shifted to one of gravity, and I acknowledged his insight with a nod, fully aware of his correctness. We could no longer maintain the illusion that this wasn't unfolding. We could no longer reside in the dreamscape we had fashioned. Yet despite my agreement, a fragment of my being hesitated to release its grip. The days that followed that fateful night in the living room slipped away in a haze. Zach and I grew increasingly audacious, engulfed by the flames we had ignited. Each moment spent in his company was akin to a precious gem, a clandestine delight that weighed heavily on my heart. Our moments together were a delicate dance of affection and trepidation, yet as the days unfolded, an ever-growing burden of guilt began to anchor my heart. Brianna returned from her conference that subsequent Monday, and her presence at home served as a stark reminder of the life Zach and I were dismantling piece by piece. She radiated warmth and cheer, blissfully unaware of the treachery unfolding in the shadows behind her. Observing her engage with the children stirred a deep sense of shame within me. She was undeserving of this, just as they were. As the night enveloped the world, I found myself seated on the porch steps, gazing into the depths of the darkness that followed Brianna's retreat to her dreams. The air was crisp, and the stars shimmered like tiny fragments of glass scattered across the night sky. I wrapped my scarf snugly around my shoulders, battling both the biting cold and the tumultuous thoughts swirling in my mind. Zach entered moments later, his footsteps whispering against the wooden floor. He nestled beside me, our shoulders brushing against one another. "You've been rather silent," he remarked gently. "I've been pondering," I responded, avoiding his eyes. "About us?" I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. "Zach, we can't continue down this path." He exhaled deeply, raking his fingers through his hair. "I am aware." "It's more than complicated," I began, my voice trembling. "This isn't right. You have a wife and a family, and I feel like I've lost my sense of self in all of this. I can't even recognize who I am anymore." He took my hand, his touch gentle. "You remain unchanged, Aliyah. You are the one who cherishes my children, as if they were your own, the one who has revitalized this space. Don't allow this to ruin everything." I withdrew my hand, tears beginning to brim in my eyes. "But it has Zach. Can't you see we've ruined everything?" His calm demeanor shattered. "I love you, Aliyah," he uttered, his voice trembling with emotion. "I can't lose you." His words struck me with an undeniable force. I loved him as well. There was no longer any denying that truth. Yet love by itself was insufficient to mend the wounds we had inflicted. "I love you too," I murmured, the confession escaping my lips before I could rein it in. However it is simply unraveling me from within. In the following week, I arrived at a decision. I realized I could not remain not in this manner. The burden of our decisions felt insurmountable, and I could no longer reside in a dwelling constructed from deception. In a discreet manner, I began my search for a new job, reaching out to agencies and families in need of a nanny. It was a struggle. I had formed a deep bond with Splendor and Emmanuel, and the idea of parting ways with them was utterly devastating. Yet deep down, I understood that this was a necessary step for my own salvation. As the evening settled in and I tucked Splendor into bed, she gazed up at me with her enchanting blue eyes and inquired, "Aliyah, are you leaving?" The unexpectedness of her question took me by surprise. "What makes you think that, darling?" I inquired. "You've been feeling down," she stated plainly, "and Daddy says that people depart when sorrow envelops them." I attempted to maintain a smile as I tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "I'm not going anywhere right now. Splendor, just go to sleep, okay?" She nodded, her eyelids fluttering shut. Yet as I stepped away, her words lingered in my mind. She was right. I was leaving because I could no longer endure a space that felt like a prison of my own making. 2 weeks later, I resigned from my job. Brianna's expression was one of shock, confusion, and concern. "Aliyah, is everything okay?" she inquired, setting her coffee cup down. "Of course, Mrs. Jacob," I replied, maintaining my composure. "But I've received another job offer, and I believe it's time for me to move on." Her expression revealed deep hurt. "You have played an integral role in this family. Do you truly believe this is the right course of action?" I nodded, unable to meet her gaze. "Indeed, I'm certain." Zach remained mostly silent when I shared the news with him. He merely nodded. His jaw clenched, his eyes, betraying an emotion I struggled to decipher. Was it anger, sadness, or perhaps regret? "It seems I cannot alter your perspective, can I?" he inquired softly. "No," I responded, my tone unwavering. "I must undertake this." The day I departed was a tapestry woven with a myriad of emotions. Splendor and Emmanuel clung to me, tears streaming down their faces, and it struck me deeply. Brianna enveloped me in a warm embrace, expressing her gratitude for all I had done for their family. Zach lingered by the door, his fists tightly clenched at his sides. As I placed my suitcase in the taxi, an unusual sense of relief washed over me. The house once my sanctuary and my prison slipped into the distance as we departed. Uncertainty loomed ahead, yet one conviction anchored my thoughts. I realized it was essential to embark on a journey of self-discovery, to rekindle the faith and values I had once abandoned, and to extend forgiveness to myself for all that had transpired. That evening, within the confines of the modest apartment I had rented on the other side of town, I found myself kneeling and offering a prayer for the first time in many months. A gentle wave of tranquility washed over me. I had my flaws and I had stumbled, yet I stood poised to embrace a fresh start. Greetings, dear readers. If this tale has captured your interest and you yearn for more narratives of its kind, kindly consider tapping that like button and subscribing for further adventures. Extraordinary tales unfold each week. Be sure to activate notifications to stay updated. If you have your own wild narratives or concepts you'd like us to delve into, please share them in the comments. I'm eager to listen. Thank you for tuning in.